Hi there, Alex here at mixinglessons.com. In this video, we're going to talk about the idea of fixing something in the mix. So what does it mean when you hear somebody say fixing it in the mix or fix it in the mix? Well, that would refer to any time where perhaps you're recording some vocals and the tuning isn't quite right, and you think to yourself, well, that's okay, I can tune the vocals when I'm mixing. Or perhaps you're recording an instrument and the timing's a little bit off, but you think to yourself, that's okay, I can fix the timing when I'm mixing. Or perhaps you're recording something and the way you've got the mic set up doesn't sound great, the recording that you're getting isn't sounding great, but you think to yourself, well, I can probably improve this when I mix the track. Any of these would be examples of times where the intention is to fix something in the mix. You're going to fix it later rather than dealing with it at the recording stage. And in this video, I want to talk to you about why I think that that's a really bad approach to take when you're recording and mixing music. Now, before we dive in, if you want to get a head start with applying EQ to your music, applying compression to your music, or recording vocals in your home studio, then head over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads and download a copy of my free EQ cheat sheet, my free compression cheat sheet, and my free vocal recording guide. Okay, so why do I think that the idea of fixing things in the mix is the wrong approach to take when you're recording and mixing tracks? Well, first of all, let me just say that there's nothing wrong with using the tools that your software has if you need them. So whether it's things like Elastic Audio in Pro Tools or FlexTime in Logic, or whether it's something like the editing capabilities that your software has, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with using those, and they certainly play a role in my mixing. But I like to think of those as a last resort, a sort of safety net if you can't get a better recording at the recording stage, rather than thinking of them as the tool that I know that I'm going to go and use to fix whatever's not sounding right. And so if I was doing some recording and I wasn't happy with the way that the recording was sounding, then I would always experiment with different mic placements first to try and capture a sound that I was more happy with at the recording stage. If I was recording a vocalist and the tuning wasn't quite right, then I would always go for another take and try to capture the best performance that I could at the recording stage, rather than seeing the recording stage as a time to get okay recordings, which I would then fix later on. If I was recording an instrument and the timing wasn't great, I would always go for a few more takes to try and get the best performance that I could, rather than thinking of how I would fix the timing later. And the reason that I use this approach is that when it then comes to the mixing stage, what you're doing is you're taking these great recordings that you've got and you're enhancing them and you're making them fit together. You're making each element of the mix complement the rest of the mix. Whereas when you go into the mixing stage and you're working with recordings that have issues with them, then I find that the mixing stage can become more a process of trying to salvage the song rather than enhance it and make it sound great. It becomes a case of trying to use the mixing stage to create something that's usable rather than something that you're really, really pleased with. And so my approach to this is always to try and get the best recordings that you can. If you're not happy with the recordings whilst you're recording them, then try everything you can to try and improve those recordings. Now, obviously, there might come a point where you've done multiple takes and you have to just make the call that this is as good as this is going to get and I will improve it later if I need to. But generally, I find that if you go for another take and if you try to improve things at the recording stage, you almost always can get an improvement. And actually, the same logic applies for me when you're doing the mixing itself. Don't ever be tempted to think, right, the mix isn't quite how I want it, but this can probably be improved at the mastering stage. Don't ever move something along to a later stage if it can be dealt with at the time. Because the better the recordings, the easier the mix will be and the better the mix will sound. The better the mix, the easier the mastering will be and the better the masters will sound. So don't ever put anything off to a later stage in the music production process and think, oh, I'll fix it later on, I'll fix it there. Always do everything you can at the stage that you're at to try and improve things there and then. And so that's my approach to the idea of fixing something in the mix. And that's why I think that that should always be a last resort and a safety net after you've done everything you can at the recording stage to try and get good takes. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel for future videos. And don't forget to head over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads for your free EQ cheat sheet, your free compression cheat sheet, and your free vocal recording guide. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.